The present perfect continuous tense might seem rather complicated, and by the time students learn it, they're adding to a number of tenses they already need to remember, so piling another one on just isn't very appealing. But maybe we shouldn't think of this as yet another tense. Instead, it's a combination of tenses we're already familiar with, namely the present perfect merged with the continuous aspect. Let's start with a form. A present perfect verb string starts with have or has, and then the following verb is in the perfect participle form, as in you have won, or she has fallen asleep. It's usually the main verb that's in the perfect participle form, but not necessarily, and we'll get back to that in a minute. What's important is that whatever verb follows have or has is in the perfect participle form. Next, we have the continuous aspect, and for this video we'll consider progressive and continuous to be the same thing. Continuous forms use a form of to be followed by a verb in the ing form. Again, that ing verb is usually the main verb, but not necessarily. Examples are, you are winning and she was falling asleep. Let's combine these two styles to create the present perfect continuous form. We start with have has followed by the perfect participle. We also have to be followed by an ing verb. Merge them together so that there's an overlap in the middle. And now the verb that follows have has is not the main verb, but to be. To be in the perfect participle form is been. The final result is this: have or has, been, verb ing. To learn the form like that, we spent most of the time reviewing two concepts we already knew, plus a little time to think about how the two of them fit together. Let's do the same with usage. Present perfect is used for verbs that began in the past but are still relevant in the present. We often use it to express experiences, status, or results. Meanwhile, continuous is used for currently active or ongoing verbs that are temporary and unfinished. It's often used for long-lasting or repeated verbs, or to emphasize duration. Therefore, the present perfect continuous is used for active verbs that began in the past with a temporary and unfinished relevancy in the present. That's great in theory, but honestly it's still a mouthful, so let's break it down more. One of the ways present perfect can continue to be relevant is if the past verb's results extend into the present. For example, the result of Margot has painted is that now she has a lovely picture she can add to her gallery. If we use the continuous to say Margot is painting in her studio, we express what she's actively doing now with the understanding that it's temporary. We can combine these two ideas to highlight temporary results. Margot hasn't returned any of her calls because she has been painting. Not returning calls is a result of her busyness, but Margot probably will return those calls later this evening or maybe tomorrow. This result is less substantial than the fact that she now has a finished piece of art. Before we move on, let's note that has been painting could be said when the action is still unfinished, as with continuous. Or the painting could be finished, as with present perfect. But in that case, it must have been quite recent, since the result probably will finish soon, seeing as it's, temporary. What's important is that the moment this sentence is said, the result is still unfinished. Here's another example. Gary has played tennis since he was 8. The present perfect showcases Gary's experience as a tennis player. If you ask someone what Gary's up to these days, they might say, Gary is still playing tennis, affirming not only that it's ongoing, but also that he's been doing it for a long time. Combined together, we might say, Gary has been playing tennis since he was 8, so now he's ready for a change. In practice, has been playing is interchangeable with has played in this context. With present perfect continuous, you're simply drawing a bit more attention to the duration. Alright, let's try a different approach. We can look at the differences between present perfect and continuous, then see what's in the middle ground. Suppose the focus of a verb can be on the action, on its result, or somewhere in the middle. For the more basic continuous verbs, the focus is almost solely on the action. The present perfect places more emphasis on results, but of course the action itself still has importance. The present perfect continuous lies between them, acknowledging the results, or perhaps made in light of the results, but drawing more attention to the action. One way you could do this is by explaining the cause of a present state. Why is the ground wet? Because it has been raining. This example starts with the result, then redirects toward the action that caused it. Another way we can use present perfect continuous is in talking about an incidental result of an action, but not the final result. Suppose the action is waiting for someone to show up, and the ultimate result is that they do show up eventually. But if you were waiting for a long time, you might have grown irritable, and understandably so. That irritability is a byproduct of waiting for so long, but it's not the intended result. So to express or to explain your irritability, you might say, I have been waiting for an hour. Here's another spectrum. On one end, we focus on the past, as with past continuous. On the other end, we focus on the present, as with present continuous. In the middle is present perfect. As we've said before, present perfect is in the balance between past and present. In between present perfect and present continuous is present perfect continuous, which refers to both the past and the present, but places more emphasis on the present. The action may or may not have begun a long time in the past, but what's important to us when we use this tense is that the action has only finished recently or is just finishing now, or that we're really feeling the effects of the verb in this moment. All this might seem a little vague, but that's okay. There's a lot of flexibility in present perfect continuous, and there's a fair amount of overlap with present perfect and with present continuous. Often we could use two of these forms, or possibly all three, to make true statements in a context. Using present perfect continuous often comes down to what features of the context you want to emphasize. Let's recap with what seems to be the epitomic example for present perfect continuous. I have been running, which I might say to explain why I'm out of breath, or why I'm sweating so much, both of which are incidental results, not the ultimate one of winning a medal or staying fit or whatever. I may or may not have crossed the finish line by the time I say this, but regardless of whether the action is finished, the effects are certainly unfinished. In other words, I'm still sweating and breathing hard as I say it. But the effects are also temporary. A few minutes after I complete the race, I'll regain my breath. And while I make this statement in light of those evident results, the sentence itself addresses their cause. It places more emphasis on the action. Again, I may or may not have crossed the finish line when I make this statement, but when I do say it, running has been going on for a long time, and I'm calling attention to that fact. Or at the very least, it feels like a long time. And what's important is not the start or even the bulk of the experience, but how I feel about the action in the present or recent past. To summarize, the present perfect continuous is a cross between present perfect and present continuous, both in its form and its usage. It's often applied to longer verbs that began in the past while addressing unfinished incidental results. But if all else fails, students should simply think about how we use present perfect and how we use continuous verbs. If a situation calls for an overlap of the two, they should use present perfect continuous.